to next session of our SAP Basis training. In this particular session, we will be discussing about transactional processing, how SAP will handle the transactional processing. As we seen in our previous sessions, this screen explains how a database transaction is being executed. Let's say whenever a user is executing any transactions, let's say for example here you have the output to the screen, then based on the input from the customer, you have an output. Here, it could be possible that a database transaction being executed. So, every transaction which is executed by the user needs to be saved in the SAP. Now, you may think how SAP will handle the issues. Let's assume that when you go to, for example, different SAP business transactions, let's say a sales order. So you will key in different informations. Based on the informations, you will have another information which is popped in, and you will key in this information. So once you save the information, only this particular transaction is being written into the database. Similar to your Oracle. So if you are an Oracle database administrator, then you know how a commit statement is being executed. Same fashion, it's not exactly like Oracle, but just to give you a comparison, you can also think like Oracle. So once the transaction is being executed, then the specific user will save the changes, then the actual data will be written into a ABAP system. However, it is also possible that specific transaction was terminated. Let's say the user is not able to complete the entire transaction. In that kind of scenarios, you will have a rollback. SAP automatically will roll back to the previous date for the specific record. That is the way SAP transaction are transferred to database transactions. Let us log into our system and see how many work process, dialog work process we have in the system which we are used before, the ECC system. So let's log in to the ECC system. Okay, in order to check the number of work process, or in order to check the status of work process, we will use the transaction SM50SM50. Need to give you all the available work process. Here you can see we have 0 to 9, that is 10 dialog work process running in the systems. This is number of work process. Here you can see the type, whether it's a dialog or update, enqueue, background, spool, or update to work process. The PID means each work process will have its own program ID. This ID is referred in most of the places, like even in the OS level, this ID will be used to identify what is the work process which is being related to this specific, or what is the processes which is running on this specific work process. Then here you can see the status. Now you can see all the work processes waiting, except there is only one dialog process which says running. Okay, and here if it is waiting for some reason, then it will give you the waiting reason, or it's waiting for the RFC status, or it's waiting for to release the lock entries. So there is a lot of reasons you will find it here. So why it is waiting. At the moment it is blank, that means it's waiting for, or waiting to accept new requests to process the required documentation or required data. Here you can see a restart. It says it's all available for restart, that means it started, it's running. Here you can see errors, dumps. You can also see here there is one dump. That means if there is errors coming because of this specific work process, then you can see it here. In some cases, if let's say for example poorly written another code, you can have a lot of shortcuts, and you're trying to execute background, it will create a lot of shortcuts. In that cases, then you'll be able to see the dumps, how many dumps it's created. Then you have semaphore, this will come to later, semaphore. Then we have CPU, what is the CPU load and the time, and also the report. The report is, for example, in this scenario, you can see the username trainer1 is logged into the client 001, and this is the report it's running. At the moment, we are the trainer1, which is running this specific report. So this report is nothing but this SM50, also a program which has been run. So you can see that. So you can see all the active work process also in this SM50. And here you can see the what it is doing. For example, it's reading tables or updating tables like this. Here you'll be able to find which table it's reading or updating. So in SM50, you will be able to find all this information. Next, let us see how the log management work in SAP. This also we have seen already in our previous course. So let's review and see how the log management is working in the SAP system. So in general, if you see in any database, if you are going to edit some content of the specific table, then that specific content needs to be logged for other users, meaning it needs to be logged so that the other user will not edit the same content of your database. So for this, SAP have log management. So log management basically a table which is available in the main memory of the SAP system. If you know Oracle have a locking mechanism, or all the database have its own locking mechanism. However, here the log management which we are talking about is within the SAP system itself. So you don't need to use the database log management systems. So in SAP main memory, there will be a table, internal table, which maintain all the log entries in your SAP system. So let's assume one user want to update a specific record. In that specific time, for example, if the dialog user is trying to access or trying to read or modify a specific table, then it will trigger the log mechanism using enqueue work process. This we have seen it before. The enqueue work process is the process which is used for log mechanism. And remember one thing, you have only one enqueue work process for the entire SAP systems. That logically it should be like that, otherwise it is not going to work. Yeah? So the log mechanism should be managed by one central place. So what happens is, if there is a log is required by any work process, then the request is sent to enqueue work process. Then the enqueue work process will check with the locking table whether this specific record is already locked or not. Even in the locking mechanism also, you don't need to lock the entire table or entire record. There will be key field which will be specified as main field which needs to be locked. For example, user master. In user master, you have a lot of information. So you don't need to lock all the table entries. So does not mean we need to lock all the information which is available in the specific screen. So you will have some key fields that will be entered in the lock table. So first what it will check, the enqueue will check whether this specific table is already been locked, or specific record is already been locked or not. If it is locked, then it will send back a message to the specific work process which is requesting. It says, okay, this has been already been locked, or this will lock and it will give the information and the user can do the specific changes. This is one way of doing the lock mechanism. Let's assume the locking is required from a different applications instance where you do not have an enqueue work process. Then what is going to happen? As we know, the message server is the common communication interface between all application as well as the central instance. So in this case, for example, this dialog work process is requesting for a change in some specific table. So this dialog process will tell ABAP dispatcher that it is requesting for one lock entry. Then the ABAP dispatcher will in turn contact the ABAP message server will contact the dispatcher where the enqueue work process is available. Then it will tell the enqueue work process this particular entry where it's marked as green needs to be locked. Then this specific thing will be locked. Then it will allow the user to edit. So once it is marked for locked, then the user will be edit this record. This record could be more than one table. Please remember, whenever you go to one specific SAP transaction, the transaction does not need to be in one table. That means all the information which is in the specific transaction does not need to be in one specific table. It could be more than one table. This is internally determined what all the entries which needs to be locked here. So once that is locked, then the user will be able to do the changes. Once the change is done and saved, then automatically sends the message. Then the enqueue will release this specific lock. We could also see in our SAP system how the locking mechanism works. So let's do one thing. Let's edit our user master. Here in our SAP system, go to the transaction code SU3. SU3 is the transaction code which you code SU3. SU3 is the transaction code SU3. SU3 is the transaction code which will allow you to edit your own personal information in the user master. So I am in SU3 screen. Let me make this one as small. I will open one more session in the same system. Keep it side by side. Here I will try to edit this particular user. The user which we locked in is trainer 01. So SU03 will allow all the user to edit their own personal information. Of course, you cannot add any roles or any privileges. You just edit your own information. So I will go to the transaction SU01. This transaction is used to create or modify user. Let me try to modify that same user, trainer 01. So I will go here to the change mode. Now you can see the maintenance of user trainer 01 is locked by trainer 01. Of course, there is a confusion in the names because we are using our own user to edit. So now you can see this specific user trainer 01 is being locked by trainer 01. Okay, that means only one person can edit this record, trainer 01. So now let me go to the transaction to see how this is being locked. For this you can go to menu, tools, administration, monitoring, and you can see a sample lock entries. It's a very simple screen, but it's quite useful screen. It's been like this for so many years. It's never been changed. Here you can see table name. If you wanted to search for one specific table, you can type in the table name and you can search for specific table. Or lock argument. Lock argument is what field is being locked. For example, there is a one lock argument which needs to be searched across the table and when useful. Then you can also filter by client and also by username. You can specify the username or you can simply put star here, let's put star and execute. When you say list, then you can see this is the lock entry. You can see client 001, user who is locking the entry is client 01. This time, this is exclusive lock. E means exclusive lock. There is different type of locks which is available. If you press F1, then you'll be able to see the detail of lock method. What is this E means? And this, as you know, every field SAP have a very good help where you can see the detail. You can see the exclusive lock, that is E, the shared lock, that means shared between other users. Then you have exclusive but cumulative lock. Then you also have optimistic lock. These are all used for different purposes. This is again determined by the system itself, so we don't explicitly specify what lock should be used in the standard transactions. And you can see which table is being locked. And you can see the lock argument. Lock argument here is client as well as the username, the client 01. Then you have the user count. For example, if you take the specific table, you wanted to see how many entries are in the specific table, you can put the table name and say execute. The entries are in the specific table, you can put the table name and say execute, then it will give all the table name. Like this you can filter it. Okay. The reason why we need to filter it, if you are in a live system, in a productive system, in a bigger SAP productive system, you will have thousands of lock entries. It's popping up and it goes off after some seconds. So this will keep happening. So it's quite difficult to see a lock entry in a productive system in a live environment. So that time you need to use all this filter to find out exactly what you are looking for. So this is the way to find the lock entries. This also, as a basis consultant, this is also one of your daily tasks to check any old locks. We call it deadlocks. It is possible some user logged some record and they did not log out or they did not complete the transaction properly. Then this will be lying there like this. Then nobody will be able to edit this particular record. In that cases, we need to find out all the lock entries, for example, more than 24 hours or more than 48 hours, and analyze these lock entries, why these lock entries are there. In most of the cases, we simply delete these lock entries. We can also check whether this user is using this particular transaction or user is doing something. To see that, you have a transaction code SM04. If you go to /SM04, you can see how many users are logged into the system. You can see DTEIC, which is standard user, and SAP JSF, which is for the Java user. These are the standard users, and you can also see our user parameter. Okay. So now we go to simple. So we have this lock entries. Now let me go back and let me refresh again. Now you can see the lock entries is gone. So now we see how the lock entries. So we have this lock entries. Now let me go back and let me. You can see how many users are logged into the system. You can see DTEIC, which is standard user, and SAP JSF, which is for the Java user. These are the standard users, and you can also see our user parameter. Okay. So now we go to simple. So we have this lock entries. Now let me go back and let me refresh again. Now you can see the lock entries is gone. So now we see how the lock entry works in your SAP system. Next, let us look into update process, how that update happens in SAP system. So whenever you are executing any transaction or inserting any record or changing an existing record, then the update process happens. Let's say, for example, we want to update the record from this specific application server, from the dialog instance. So the SAP GUI user will log into the ABAP dispatcher. The dispatcher will go to a dialog work process which will request for the update. So before updating, we need to go to the edit mode. So we need to change something. Even if you are inserting, that particular record needs to be logged. So first it will request for an enqueue. Okay, there's an enqueue request is sent to the message server. When the message server in turn contact the ABAP dispatcher, then the enqueue work process will place the lock entry in the lock tables. So once the lock entry is done, then your enqueue work process will give the feedback. Then it will request for update, that is V1 update. Then it will again go to the dispatcher. It will trigger the update work process to do the specific update. That means the changes whichever is done will be returned to the database. Please remember, the changes which will be done during this process after the commit it is not necessary to be a synchronous change. It is generally an asynchronous change. It means that thousands of users will be working in the SAP system. So each transaction cannot be committed or cannot be written in the database in a synchronous mode. So it works in the asynchronous mode. By the way, when I'm talking about here, that it will say it's a V1 update. There is two types of update. There will be one called V1 update, another one is V2 update. We also seen this in our work process before. That two type of update work process available, V1 and V2. V1 is important update. That means it's very critical update, and V2 is non-critical update. So we have two type of updates available. So once the update is done into the specific database, then it will release the log entry from the log table. So this is how the update is done in the SAP system. So let's go to the system and check how this looks like, or how we can monitor the updates. So now we are in our SAP system. First, let's go to SM50 and see the update work process. Here you can see update and update 2. This is V1 and V2, different work process for both. So we can use either V1 or V2 work process, meaning to say that we don't explicitly define which update work process to be used or what kind of update need to be done. This will be determined by SAP itself. We don't explicitly define this, which update to be used. We can also monitor the updates in your SAP system. This also sometimes will be done by basis consultant, or in general it could also be done by functional consultant. Let's see how to monitor the update first. Go to tools, then administration, monitor, then you have update, SM30. Here you can see cancel to be updated, V1 executed, V2 executed, that means successfully completed, and V2, we already seen what is V1 and V2, and we can also see all. You can also filter by client, by user. In general, we do monitor the cancel updates because some of the financial documentation which is cancelled in the middle, which needs to be checked and it needs to be closed. If in case this is not completed properly, then this is going to have some financial impact. So this needs to be checked and closed in some cases. So this also sometimes is an audit compliance or audit requirement in some cases. So the cancelled updates will be monitored. So if you simply select here, select your selection criteria and execute it, then you will be able to see the updates which is presently running or presently happening in the system. At the moment, we don't have any user in the system. That's the reason you don't see it. You will see the user and what is the transaction code which is presently being executed by this user to do the specific update. That you can see it here. And you can generally monitor the cancelled update because this is quite important. In case this update is not completed, you can also repeat the update and do this. Generally, we don't do that because we don't know whether this specific user created another record to update the same document. Let's say, for example, if it is a sales order which did not happen, a sales order does not stop in the middle anyway, just for an example. So if it stopped in the middle and he couldn't complete it, he may create another one sales order and complete his business requirement. So the previous sales order cannot be executed. So we are not supposed to do this update. So basis is again very critical. You have to be very careful what we are executing. And we can also delete the updates, and please make sure that it's the right entry which you are deleting. In general, we don't delete any entries from here because these are all very important information which needs to be kept in SAP. Okay, this is about update, how it works in SAP. Next, let us see printing, how the printing works, how the work process for printing is being used. So we have a specific work process for spool, which is marked as yes, in order to handle the printers. We can print any document from SAP directly to a printer. There is different kind of printers available. You have printers which is directly connected to an SAP system through OS, normal like Unix or server-based printers, and we'll also have print servers. So SAP can send the output directly to the print server, and this print server can send the output to specific printer wherever we are requesting. So before you print anything, of course, we need to configure these printers in SAP. Printer configuration is another topic we have in our coming sessions, how to configure the printers. So now we are just seeing how the work process is being used. So we will come to that printer configuration in a later stage. It's actually a bigger topic in our SAP basis course. So whenever you print any request, the print request, for example, the SAP GUI user is trying to print something from this dialog work process. So it is going to dispatcher allows the dialog work process is trying to print. So when it prints, or when this user print any data, this will create a spool request. The spool request is nothing but it's a collection of your output. So this output will be created or collected and created as a spool request. This spool request will have your printer detail, what all the page needs to print on all relevant information which is required to print this document. This will be saved in TemSec. This is temporary sequential database, where all the output will be saved here. So once the spool request is created, then this spool work process will pick up this pull request and send to the output device. So that is the work of this spool work process. This is again done in first out basis. This temp stack also can be monitored and can be managed from your SAP systems. This is quite simple. Let's have a look into our systems and see how the spool is being managed. So now we are in our SAP system. If we go to SM50, this is our spool work process SPO. So let's go to a program. Let's try to execute a program. Let's go to SA38. SA38 is a transaction code to run an ABAP program. So there is a program called RS Param. This is basically a program which we use mainly for SAP Basis to see the profile parameters. So I will put the program name here and simply execute, or press effect. I'll say execute again. Now you can see this is the output of our program. So if you want to print this information, you simply click on this print icon or say Ctrl P. Then a pop-up will come to select the output device. As I said, before you print, you need to configure the output device. You need to configure the printer. In our case, we did not do anything because it's a fresh SAP system. However, there will be always a standard printer configured in our SAP system, that is LP01. Just for testing purpose, we will use this one. Anyway, this is not going to be printed anywhere because we did not configure this printers properly. Okay, let's say continue. Then it's asking for the format of the paper. A standard printer configured in our SAP system, that is LP01. Just for testing purpose, we will use this one. Anyway, this is not going to be printed anywhere because we did not configure this printers properly. Okay, let's say continue. Then it's asking for the format of the paper. In general, when you create a device, you need to define the paper format and so on. So I'll say okay. Now you can see here, it is created spool request number 8902 without immediate output. So it created the spool request without immediate output. That means it's not going to immediately print in the printer. This also we can configure it. We will come and see this later how this is being done. So to monitor the spool request or to manage the spool request, you have two different transactions, SP02 and SP01. SP02 is basically used to manage your own spool request. SP01 is used by basis administrator to manage the entire spool in your SAP system. So let's go to SP02 and see whether this specific spool request is being created or not. 8902 /n SP02. You can see 8902 is created. If you again say print, then it will start printing, immediate printing. Or you can also display the spool request. You simply click here. It says so many pages. You can see this is the output which is created. So you can see this kind of a preview. Okay, this is the spool. Okay. And you can go to the next transaction, SP01, where you can see the spool request by request number or with range, or you can also see by users. Now we are in trend 01, let's say execute, and you can see our spool request. So this is how we manage the spool request, or this is how the spool work process being used. So let us see background work process. We see in dialog work process, when you wanted to execute some transaction, then you will log into SAP GUI and execute transactions. We also seen how the background work process works. So in background work process, you can schedule jobs or you can also execute jobs in background. So you may think, why do I need to execute jobs in background? It is possible some of the job which you may execute in your SAP system is resource intensive jobs. That means it requires a lot of resource. So it is not possible that you execute these programs in the foreground mode. That means you execute and you need to wait for a long time. And the bigger system, we will not allow the user to execute this foreground for a specific time, for more than some specific time. That's simply because if you allow that, then that user will be blocking that specific dialog work process. So it may not work like that. So in that scenarios, we advise the user, or we recommend the user to execute the specific program in background mode. So the background mode, then you are not disturbing anybody, then you simply execute this program. So these programs can be scheduled before, or you can also schedule this program on periodic basis. For example, you want to run some settlement of some FI document which needs to be executed every week, then it's possible. In Basis also, we do schedule some of the background jobs, for example, logging of users or comparing profiles. Like this, we also schedule a lot of background jobs which needs to be executed in the night, because in the daytime you cannot execute these programs. So like this, you can schedule the background jobs in SAP systems. So this is quite easy. Then you can also run it for periodic basis, or you can also run it for, or you can also use it for some of the jobs which may require quite long time. It will run for quite a long time. So instead of running in the dialog work process, you can run it in the background work process. Let's go to our system and see how we can schedule a background work process or background job and how we can monitor this. We are in our SAP system. If we go to SM50, we can see how many background work process we have. We have 1, 2, 3 background work process. So at the moment, we have 3 background work process. That means it can execute 3 parallel jobs in the same time. So let's take the same program which we used, is A38. Go to RS param. Here, if you see, here we executed it in the foreground. Okay. In general, most of the SAP transactions, the output you can execute in background. Most of means not all, because for example, some system-related transaction code you cannot execute in background. In many of the business transactions, you will have an option to execute in the background, mainly for the records. So if I go here, program, you can see execute in background. Of course, we need to specify a printer name here. So this background job also will create a spool. Let's say for the specific program is designed to create a spool, then it will create a spool request. Okay, let's say continue. I will simply say immediate here. We will come back to this later in the session of background job scheduling. That means we scheduled it to run it immediately. Okay, RS param. So if you wanted to check the specific job, whether it is running or it's completed, or let's say the status of this one, you go to the transaction SM37. You say /n SM37. Then simply execute it. You can see this is the program which we run. It's finished. If you select this one and check the job log, then you can see it started like this and it's finished. This program is not designed to create a spool request in the background. That's the reason you do not have a spool request. Generally, some of the programs which is designed to have an output on the spool, then you will be able to see some spools. Maybe we can check some another program which may be running in our system and just put star, that will execute all the programs. Yeah, you can see here, let's say for example, this SLD collector. This is for solution manager. You can see the symbol here, that thing is a spool. I select one program and see this like spool. And open this. Now you can see this is the output of this specific spool. This again can be printed also. Let's say if it is automatically printed, also possible, or it can also be the spool, and if you want to print it, you can still print it. So this is about background work process. With this, we are coming to the end of this particular session. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you in the next session.